Okay then, ladies and gentlemen, I open the meeting of the Council. Welcome to the October 2018 meeting of Sandwell Council. The meeting will be webcast live, allowing people to view the meeting via the Council's website. We do not film the public gallery. The press and any member of the public can film the meeting, making an audio recording, take photographs or blog and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask if anyone is intending to film the meeting? If any member of the public objects to being recorded, this is your opportunity to leave the meeting. Members, if you wish to speak, please indicate clearly. I will call on members to speak in order. Can I remind you that before you speak, you will need to switch on your microphone and wait until your picture appears on the large screen. When you have finished speaking, please switch off your microphone. Is there any apologies?
Madam Mayor, we have the same apologies as for the first meeting. Councillors Ahmed, Bauer, Sanders, Underhill, Webb, Pam Hughes, Cherrington, Keith Davis and Pat Davis. And as we know from the named vote, Councillor Yvonne Davis and Councillor Dr Yaron are absent without apology.
Okay. Are there any other apologies for absence? Can I ask the Chief Executive to read any declarations he has received? Oh, sorry, declarations of interest, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I haven't received any declarations of interest in advance for the meeting.
Does any member have any other declarations they need to declare? Okay. Minutes of previous meeting. The minutes of the annual meeting of Council held on the 17th of July 2018 are before you for confirmation as a correct record. Are the minutes agreed?
No.
And it's my announcement. I am pleased to announce that tonight I am inviting the leader to sign the Time to Change Employer Mental Health Pledge. Time to Change is a growing social movement working to change the way we all think and act about mental health problems. Sandwell Council takes the health and well-being of our employees very seriously. Signing the pledge demonstrates our commitment to change the way we think and act about mental health in the workplace and assures that employees who are facing these problems feel supported. We are more committed than ever to ensuring we have the right support in place to help prevent mental health and encourage employees to utilise the services and support available to them at any time. Could I invite the leader to sign the pledge, please? I hope you all have seen the display about corporate parenting at the entrance of the chamber as you came in today. Please fill in your flyer that has been distributed and register your interest in the new corporate parenting training sessions that will be taking place in the new year. I know that you all care about our looked after children, and these sessions will help you to have a better understanding of the corporate parenting role. So I hope you will all fill in the flyer and attend the sessions when they take place. Since the last council, the Deputy Mayor and I have been very busy attending 61 events between us. The Deputy Mayor and myself have taken part in 7 citizenships events and enjoy promoting Sandwell at each of them. I have also attended a number of Employee of the Month awards. These events make me proud to be Mayor of the Borough. On Saturday, I was delighted to attend the 90th anniversary celebrations at the Frank Chapman Centre, one of 4 residential centres run by Sandwell Council and the 3rd oldest in the country. Activities such as shelter building, campfire, bread baking and the high ropes course were available to try, and improvements to the site such as the pod accommodation were on show. Sandwell's 4 centres provide wonderful residential settings and a range of high-value outdoor and creative arts experiences to all our school children. Have become much more financially self-contained and are increasingly the envy of other authorities. The centre supports Sandwell's vision for 2030 and have an ambition to accommodate as many Sandwell school groups as possible. There is scope to do more. I encourage council members to promote use of our own centres to all Sandwell schools and academy schools, and certainly to contact our centres before considering using others. I have welcomed several schools to the Big House and hope more will take place now the new school year has started. I have attended some wonderful summer fairs, fetes and community events which were made more enjoyable due to the glorious summer we experienced. Whilst I'm on the subject of young people, the Corporate Parenting Board has special responsibilities to children in care across the borough. This includes those in residential care, those in foster care, those who live with a family member other than a parent, and those who are looked after at home in simple terms as a corporate parent. We are intended to carry out many of the roles a parent would. Whilst we may not be able to provide everything a loving parent can, we should still be able to provide the children and young people we're responsible for with the best possible support and care. The Corporate Parenting Board's purpose is to encourage people and organisations to do as much as they can to make sure children and young people feel in control of their lives and able to overcome the barriers they face. This is why it is important that as council members we all understand our responsibilities to our young people. To do this training session as part of the new member development programme, we have been arranged for all members in the new year. Please look at the flyer you have been given and put your name down for one of the sessions. Further details on the member development programme will be available shortly. Both the Deputy Mayor and I have enjoyed attending many events commemorating the Battle of Britain. These events have given us a flavour of what is yet to come with our own 100 years celebration. Remembrance Weekend, which I hope you all will join in with. My second reception was held in September at the Town Hall and was well attended by members of the community. Donations from this event amounted to £283, which will add to the £416 raised at the charity curry evening at the Little Bangla last week. My staff over at the Big House are working very hard to make my term of office a great success and are currently busy organising the special Festival of Remembrance as well as the Christmas Carol concert along with other events. So can I ask that you all lend your support and attend where possible? Thank you. Next we have petitions. This is an opportunity for any member of the council to submit a petition of a strategic nature to the council. I have not been notified of any petitions in advance. Does any member have a petition which raises strategic policy issues or which are of borough-wide significance that they wish to submit to the council? No? Written questions. Standing order number 6 allows members to ask questions of myself, the leader, cabinet members, committee chairs or other lead members.
Madam Mayor, I have no notice of any questions in advance of the meeting.
Governance review and scheme of transfer of the Police and Crime Commissioner functions to the Mayoral West Midlands Combined Authority. The Council is asked to consider the governance review and scheme of transfer of the Police and Crime Commissioner functions to the Mayoral West Midlands Combined Authority. Can I ask Councillor Ealing to present the report and invite any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Members may be aware that there's a push by the government at the national level in areas where there is a Metro Mayor to combine the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Metro Mayor into one single role, or more to the point, two roles into one single person, because it doesn't actually directly change the roles concerned. And the devolution deal for the West Midlands included a proposal that this combination of roles would take place here, with a view to that happening for the elections to both positions that are next due to take place in 2020. Now, whilst this has been included in the devolution deal, there has not yet been any public consultation at all on this proposal. So the next stage that needs to be gone through before this can be proceeded to and before the Home Office can lay an order in Parliament to bring it into effect is for the Combined Authority to consult both on the principle of combining the two roles into one and also what the detail of the governance arrangements might be for how that new role would work from 2020. In other words, how it would work within the context of the Combined Authority and what would happen to the current police and crime panel. Now, a number of these details are down for local determination. The government are very keen that the roles are combined, but much of the other detail will be down for the Combined Authority to determine in the final analysis. As a constituent member of the Combined Authority, we have to give our approval, as do the other 6 constituent councils, to the detail of this consultation, both in terms of the timetable and the detail of the governance that's to be consulted on. And then once we've done that, the Combined Authority can then determine to go ahead with the consultation. What we're not doing as Sandwell Council at this stage is actually setting out a position as to whether or not we think that the roles should be combined, nor are we making a decision on what the final governance arrangements would be. That would be for a further report that would come to the Combined Authority and to the constituent councils after the consultation period has closed. So we're quite clear about that this is not a done deal at this stage. This is about us saying we're happy to go ahead with the consultation process. I have to say the timetable to me is pretty tight. If this slips at all, then the likelihood of the roles being able to be combined for 2020 becomes a bit remote. But the timetable that's currently being set out would lead to a 2020 combined election, assuming that everything were agreed, including the final detail. Madam Mayor, I'm happy to recommend that we support going ahead with this consultation. I think it's better that the Combined Authority deal with the detail on a voluntary basis, shall we say, than it ended up being imposed on us by the government, because the combined authority has been too slow. And it does mean that we will get a say in what the final deal looks like, because it will be coming out of our process. So I'm moving that as my recommendation to the Council, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Are there any questions first? Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not a question, it's actually a comment in relation to this. As with the fire authority coming over into the combined authority, I think as much as this is the first stab at the consultation exercise, I think we as a council and our cabinet need to make sure that the governance arrangements around this are, as they say at 4.5, good governance and robust accountability are maintained. And I think we've got to make sure that when the combined authority actually take this responsibility in, that's actually written into it. I'd also make the comment that the policing precept in 4.7, it says will be set by the Mayor following consultation with the Police and Crime Panel. My feeling is that the Mayor should be doing more than just consulting the Police and Crime Panel. In terms of the timetable, which is outlined in 5.4, when this report was presented to the Combined Authority Board a few weeks ago, I did make the point that there was no referral to scrutiny in it, and as a result of that, they're intending to put a referral to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the Combined Authority into the timetable. I think it's essential that the governance of this side of things is actually scrutinised quite closely, and in fact we do have a working group dealing with the governance both of the fire authority and the police that will be looking into this in quite some detail.
Now, if there are no other questions or comments, Madam Mayor, I can concur with Councillor Peter Hughes. It will be important to ensure that full accountability arrangements in place. Of course, at the moment, the Police and Crime Commissioner has to consult with the Police and Crime Panel on the police precept, and I suppose this transposes that arrangement into the new governance arrangements for the purposes of the consultation. Now, it talks about issues around scrutiny and accountability, and of course members will know that I'm many times on record as not being a supporter of putting all powers in the hands of one person. I don't agree with having metro mayors, and I don't agree with having police and crime commissioners, so I'm not that enthusiastic about combining two posts that I don't agree with in the first place. But pragmatically, I'm not getting any choice on this, am I? Nobody's listening to us who think that collective governance is better than putting all power in the hands of one person. What we have to do here is ensure that whatever goes forward in the governance review does mean that there is proper accountability, and that you haven't got one person who's able to take any number of decisions behind closed doors with no accountability and no scrutiny by anyone else. And it'll be up to us to make sure that when, in the final analysis, the governance arrangements are put in place, that all of those checks and balances are there. And I'm quite sure that we will do that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Moved. Is everyone in agreement? Does anyone wish to object? No. Does anyone wish to abstain? No? Okay. Agenda item number 8, proposal to depart from local development. The Planning Committee recently considered a planning application which required the Council to consider granting an exception to the local development plan. Can I invite Councillor Moore to present the recommendation to depart from the local plan relating to planning application DC-18-62046, construction of new cemetery at Polk Lane Open Space, Rowley Regis?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In approximately 4 years, the existing cemetery at Polk Lane will be unable to accommodate any new burials. Therefore, planning application DC 1862046 was submitted for the construction of a new cemetery, including site remediation, widening of the existing access off Polk Lane, office building and operational yard, parking, CCTV lighting, landscaping and associated works. The application has been submitted on behalf of the Council and the site is currently owned by the Council. The development is currently part of Polk Lane open space and will ensure that there's adequate provision for new burials for approximately 50 years. When completed, local residents will still have access to the remainder of the site all year round. That's because the Council is proposing to only develop approximately 30% of the site. The application has generated a significant number of objections from local residents and also from further afield. There are also 2 petitions of objections submitted to the Planning Committee. Those concerns raised and the Council's responses to those concerns, including the mitigation measures that are proposed, are contained within the attached report for members to consider. The application was approved at the Planning Committee on the 3rd of October, but it's required to be referred to the full Council this evening because it represents what's known as a departure from the Council's adopted development plan. The reason why this is so is because in the Council's site allocations and delivery development plan document, the Polk Lane site is currently designated as open space. Now, the Council has considered a number of options prior to submitting a planning application for this particular site, and I'll summarise what some of them are very briefly. So the Council did consider whether to develop a new cemetery on the Moor Lane site. Initial site surveys and investigations concluded that there'd be significant remedial works required for that site, and therefore that option was not progressed any further. Another option that was also considered was actually not to develop any site in the south of the borough at all, because the Council is actually not under a legal obligation to provide burial space. However, should the Council choose not to proceed with this as an option and not to provide burial space, it would leave bereaved families whose loved ones were Sandwell residents and who wished to choose burial as an option for their bereaved, most likely having to choose to go to Gornal Wood Cemetery in Dudley, which is the next nearest cemetery to the existing site. Out-of-borough fees would then be applied by Dudley MBC, which would see the costs to Sandwell families more than double compared to burial in one of Sandwell's cemeteries. And also there would be a further distance for bereaved families and their loved ones to travel. Another option the Council has considered, which is a more controversial option, but is an option that has been adopted by some London councils, is whether to pursue with a policy of the reuse of existing graves. Now, I'm afraid there's currently no legislative provision that allows the Council to do this. Actually, a private bill would need to be introduced before Parliament in order for this option to be explored any further. Deeds also issued to bereaved families for the exclusive right of burial are currently for a minimum of 75 years, later 99 years. Now, the existing cemetery in Rowley Regis was actually opened in the 1920s, meaning very few graves could actually be reused if the Council were to pursue this option any further. Now, to sum up, before I bring members in to ask any questions, it's felt despite the allocation, the provision of the new cemetery is an accepted need for the borough to meet its requirements for burial space. The applicant has demonstrated that there is no realistic alternative and have also shown how the proposal can accommodate other policies of the development plan, and in particular, as I've mentioned, where feasible mitigation and compensatory measures and enhancement measures to the site are also proposed. Now, it's for these reasons that it's considered the application has demonstrated valid material considerations as to why the application should not be determined in line with the adopted plan, and why council policy should be set aside in this particular instance. Planning committee members at the meeting were minded to approve the proposal subject to full referral to the council this evening. However, ratification of this decision is now required by members, and there's now an open and free vote on the matter, so there's no party political whip on this particular item. I'll move the recommendations and the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the floor? Councillor Millard.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would like to speak against the proposal to depart from the local development plan. This area of land off Pope Lane is highly utilised green space. It's regularly used by children, young people and adults, and you can often find people playing football, walking the dog, watching the birds and various other activities. It's an area that's used and needed. The local development plan states that the quality community open space is seen as an integral part of quality living space. Specifically in relation to this area, it states that the scale of new housing growth is such that there may be requirement for new open spaces to be created and new links to existing green areas created or enhanced, certainly not taken away or minimised. But it's not just a community open space used by residents, it's also a home to many animals. The review states that this land is designated in the development plan as a community open space, a wildlife corridor and a site of importance for nature conservation. We've already received objections from both the Canal and Rivers Trust and the Wildlife Trust. The environmental impact of this has to be thought through properly. The local development plan states the protection and enhancement of the borough's environment will improve its attractiveness and make it a better area to live, work and invest. The Labour Party has a long tradition of environmental protection from the establishment of national parks after the Second World War through pioneering the Climate Change Act. One of the priorities in Labour's brand new green transformation policy was to reverse the decline of biodiversity and protect natural habitats, which, departing from this policy, completely contradicts. Sandwell is a Labour council and should be leading the way in the environmental protection. I, as a youth champion, I have to consider our future generations, and this means another green space lost in Sandwell, not just for our children but for our children's children. In July's full council, our leader said he'd like to look back at decisions in 30 years' time and think, yes, that was a good decision. Well, in my opinion, this is not a good decision now, and if we continue to allow our community open spaces to be lost, in 30 years' time we may not have any left. We currently have 4 years of space remaining at the crematorium, and I recognise the need for this to be assessed, but not for the sake of our green spaces, our wildlife and our children.
Councillor Priest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I've sat on this council for 6 years, which I know for many people in this chamber isn't a very long time, but it is for me. And I don't think I've agonised quite so much over what to do over a proposal to depart from the local development plan. I'm looking at it from a slightly different angle here. I mean, it's not just the cold black and white reality of a policy, a proposal that was written and locally agreed some years ago. This is a really difficult issue. I mean, as a council, we have as Councillor Moore said, it's not necessarily a legally binding duty, but we have almost a moral duty to respect the wishes of those individuals who have expressed a wish to be buried in Sandwell and their families in the future, but we also have to balance that with the needs of the community in the present. And we're not the first council to deal with this problem. It's a national and an international issue. You know, my internal debate prompted me to do some research on this. And in 2015, Hackney Borough Council and Tower Hamlets Borough Council both closed their doors to burials because of the same reason as us. They had no space left. And I suppose what swung it for me today was that if we agree to this departure, Councillor Moore has given a figure of 50 years, but we all know estimates can change with different circumstances. How long will it be before we're back here again asking for more land because we've run out of space? Now, I think, as I've mentioned, this is a problem that's being faced up and down the country and across the world. And I think now is as good a time as any to draw a line at this point and say, well, maybe we should be looking to solve this problem rather than just kick it down the road to whoever's going to occupy my seat and all of your seats in 50 years' time. So I'm going to vote against this evening because I think we kick the can down the road enough in politics, and now is as good a time as any to draw a line. Thank you, members.
Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm also going to speak against this. And I'll preface my remarks by saying I do recognise that we've got to have more cemetery space. And I thank the cemetery service people, really, for coming up 4 years in advance, because 4 years in advance gives us more time to look for an alternative to this proposal. And I would suggest that we should refer this back to officers and ask them to look again at alternatives to building on this green space. I voted against this planning committee on planning grounds, and I won't go over them again because, as Councillor Moore pointed out, that decision's been taken, that ship sailed really. What we've been asked tonight is to vary from the existing local development plan. Now, this site is designated as public open space. Sandwell's not like other areas of the Black Country. We haven't got the leafy lanes of Aldridge and the broad sweep of fields in Dudley and Wolverhampton. We're actually a very closely concentrated urban landscape. We need to fight to retain as much green open space as we can. So let's look at the council's own green space strategy. That says our aspiration is that green spaces will be at the heart of Sandwell's transformation and central to the economic, social and environmental health of the borough. According to a government advisory body, the National Health Service could save more than £2 billion a year if equitable good access to green space is achieved across England. It also states, and this is telling, that Blackheath Ward has much less provision than the town and borough averages. It's got 2.29 hectares per 1,000 population. The recommendation is nearly double that, at 4.42 per 1,000 head of Sandwell's population. So we're taking an area which is already deprived of public green space and taking away some of that space from them. If we look at the National Planning Policy Framework, which determines what we should do about these sort of things, they say existing open space, sports and recreational buildings and land, including playing fields, should be preserved unless an assessment has been undertaken which clearly shows the open space, buildings or land to be surplus to requirements, or the loss resulting from the proposed development will be replaced by equivalent or better provision in terms of quantity, quality and in a suitable location. I haven't seen any of that in this report. There aren't any alternative provision being offered to the people of Blackheath for this. The development itself is supposed to, if it takes place, clearly outweigh the loss to the current of former use. Well, much as we need a cemetery, and much as the people in Blackheath might welcome having another cemetery, that doesn't outweigh the loss of their green space. As I say, I'm pleased they've had the foresight to look at this 4 years in advance, because it gives at least a bit of time for us to refer this back from Council tonight to ask the officers to look again and see if we can avoid making this decision which takes away a valuable piece of green space in the community.
Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I, like others, have tossed and turned about this, and I don't know how many other people received an email from somebody yesterday giving us a report about the issues that actually surround this cemetery. And my initial reaction is, I haven't heard Councillor Moore actually, unless I misheard, I haven't actually heard him say that it would be possible to extend the Newton Road cemetery. That's a big area of land up there as far as I can recollect. And it could be possible, I would have thought, to extend that cemetery rather than taking away open space for the residents in Rowley and Blackheath. I actually attended with other members of this council a funeral only last week at Rowley Regis Cemetery. And to be fair, the parking there was horrendous. Getting in and out of the facility itself was horrendous. And I honestly believe that perhaps extending this cemetery isn't going to help with the parking issues for the people around that area. It's just going to add to it. And as it's a free vote, I, along with other members of this council, will be voting against it. Thank you.
Newton Road is a crematoria. It is not a cemetery. No one's buried there. They're spread there.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too will be voting against this tonight. We have no green space at all, as other people have said in here tonight. We've got nothing in Blackheath Ward, and I think we should leave it as it is and look at other avenues to go down. Thank you.
Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to ask everybody in the Council House, where do we take our deceased if we are not to get rid of our green spaces? If we got alternative sites, all better. But this site in question, we've all been receiving emails, is it fit for the purpose? Because on the emails we got, right, there's water underneath. But then again, where do we all take our deceased? Newton Road is a crematorium. We've got to find an alternative site, which council, I think, should abide by that. And we should fulfil the requirements of the borough. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, like others, I've received an email. I didn't attend the planning because it's not in my ward, and I suppose the evidence given to the planning committee would be far greater than the report that we've actually got. Hence why the email that we've received, I'm shocked at some of the things that I'm reading about workers having to wear breathing apparatus just to dig the graves out. Now, they're quoting from Environmental Agency T2 assessment 956065, and again, this is devastating reading if you want your loved ones to actually be buried in here and it might be flooded out. And as I say, I wasn't at the planning committee, so those things might have been dealt with in the planning conditions, but if the planning environment agency is actually quoting these things in there, then it does give cause for concern. I will vote against it, but I take point that Councillor Moore has said, that there was another site which was not suitable because of financial costs, if I've heard him right. If that's the case, then we need to look at the financial cost where there is a more suitable burial ground for our loved ones.
Is there any more comments? Can I ask Councillor Moore to respond, please?
I'll try and respond as best as I can. I'm actually not the Cabinet Member for Cemeteries. I'm the Cabinet Member for Planning and Strategic Planning. So I'll try and pick up as many of the points as I can. First of all, I think we started, I'll take them in reverse order. Councillor Jones, a number of people have received the correspondence that you refer to. In relation to the particular point about breathing apparatus, my understanding is that would not be correct, and members of staff would not be wearing breathing apparatus in order to dig out graves with mechanical equipment. It's not my job to recite all of the arguments at the planning committee, but I do believe some of those matters were covered there. And you were right in terms of the site I referred to, the Moor Lane site. The Moor Lane site that I referred to has already been investigated as well. Councillor Price, I note the points and observations both yourself and Councillor Millard have made. Obviously it is your ward, and you have made assiduous objections and representations on behalf of your constituents. Councillor Horton, again, I note the points you've raised. Again, some very good points. You know, my job this evening is the planning committee made a decision to depart from the plan, not me, which is why the report has come to full council this evening. Sort of reflecting on the debate we've had, obviously there is another 4 years of capacity at the cemetery at Rowley Ridges. What I'm tempted to do on this occasion, and given the what I feel is sort of the will of the meeting really, is actually to withdraw this particular report this evening, and I will refer it back to the relevant cabinet member, who's actually not myself, and I would suggest that the issues are also reviewed by the relevant scrutiny panel. The consequence of me doing that will be that the planning application will fall this evening when I withdraw the report. So I'll withdraw the report from the agenda in light of the discussion that we've had.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. So can we have an agreement for Councillor Moore's deferral? Yeah. So are we in agreement for it to be deferred? Anybody object? No. So it's agreed. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 9, appointment of independent member to the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee. This report seeks approval to the appointment of an additional independent member to the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee. Can I invite Councillor Priest to present the report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Members will recall at the last meeting of the Council we appointed one new independent member for the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee, and I mentioned there that the calibre of applicants for that position had been extremely high. It was agreed, it has now been agreed that we will appoint a second independent member, so we will bring our total of independent members to 3 on the committee. And that is to improve our resilience and also our expertise and the breadth of experience we have on the committee. So I present the report, I'll move it and the recommendations as laid out, and I'll take any questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any questions? No? Do we, are the recommendations approved?
Aye.
Is everyone in agreement? Anyone wish to object or abstain? No? Agenda item number 10, appointment to committees. This item has been deferred, so we won't be listening to that. Agenda item number 11, annual report of the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee 2017-18. Can I invite Councillor Priest to present the annual report of the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Me again. I don't propose to take members through the entirety of the report, but I will say that I'm incredibly pleased and proud of the work of the committee over the last 12 months. I think the Audit Committee of this Council functions extremely well. and provides the level of assurance that you as members will expect from the committee. And I would like to give a very special mention to our counter-fraud team, again, who have, they're never off the box, that department. They're always on the telly, and they've been featured again on BBC One on a programme about council tenancy fraud, I believe. Their hard work is well documented there, but it's telling a story that we already know here, that we have incredibly professional, diligent members of staff here at this council, and I'm very, very proud to run a committee that they report to. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I move the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Are there any questions for Councillor Priest?
Well, Councillor Priest asking for a commendation from this council to the committee for the work that they're doing. If so, I think it should be recorded of the good work that they are doing.
Thank you. I welcome that, and thank you, members.
Councillor Hughes.
In page 110 of the report, it says you expressed a view in the interests of the electorate that legal action relating to misconduct in public office should not be difficult to pursue. You said that you'd sent a letter to the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Home Secretary. Just wondering whether you've received a response yet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, incidentally, I have, Councillor Hughes. A few days ago, I received a response from the CPS on behalf of the Director of Public Prosecutions, which was essentially dire. The response was a copied and paste general inquiry explaining to me that the police and the CPS are two separate institutions and I should look it up more often. But not quite as blunt as that. I will be taking that response back to the committee at its next meeting and seeking advice from committee members on what we should do next. But my feeling as chair is that we shouldn't leave it. We shouldn't let it lie there. We should press home our point because, frankly, the response was utterly disgraceful.
Any other questions for Councillor Priest? Okay then, thank you. Agenda item number 12, Section 41 reports, West Midlands Police and Crime Panel and West Midlands Combined Authority updates. Periodically, the Council asks those members who represent the Council and other regional bodies to provide us with an update on the issues facing those authorities. Today we received reports from Councillor John Edwards, our West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority representative, Councillor Roger Orton, our Transport for West Midlands representative, Councillor Costigan, our representative on the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel, and the Leader of the Council with the West Midlands Combined Authority update. Can I invite Councillor Edwards to present the report on the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority?
Thank you, Mayor. The first section, as usual, is on the revenue budget, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure members of the Council know these figures now as well as I do. They've been coming back here for some time, monotonously and difficult though they are. I make the point in the report that the Fire and Rescue Authority has suffered in exactly the same way as our 7 local authorities across the West Midlands in the magnitude of the cuts that we were trying to deal with. So 50% of our government grants has gone in the year since 2011, and we're just towards the back end of that now, and the figures in the column there are the cuts in the last 4 years of that period. But those figures, of course, are on top of £28 million that we lost in the earlier part of the comprehensive spending review reductions. So we set a budget in February this year for 2018-19 of just over £95 million. We increased the fire service share of council tax by 2.99%, but even with that increase, and that was at the highest level we could set it, and we did that because of the dire financial situation that we're in, but even with that increase, West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority still raises the lowest precept for fire and rescue services in the whole of England. So we are a very cost-effective service. We're still using balances. We need to make sure that we stop using balances over the next couple of years and get the authority into a balanced budget. But we've been using balances because of the absence of any transformation money from central government. We also agreed a capital programme for the current year, Madam Mayor, back in February, just over £13 million, and that capital programme of £13 million is funded completely by the Fire and Rescue Authority itself. There's no capital programme, no capital spending allocation from government for the fire and rescue sector across England. And I'll spell that out in section 2, Madam Mayor, under capital spending. We're using our own revenue resources to rebuild fire stations that needed rebuilding, to buy fire engines, to develop IT and technology programmes, particularly for the shared fire control room that operates in both Sandwell and in West Midlands and in Staffordshire. Paragraph 3 talks about services to meet vulnerability, and members may remember that for some time we've been working with Dudley, Wolverhampton and Coventry councils, delivering for them a non-emergency falls response. So those councils felt they weren't getting a very good service for residents who were falling at home, and we've been providing that service for them. And of course those services brought the fire services into contact with the most vulnerable and frail people across the West Midlands in the areas where we were doing it. So it helped to support our prevention agenda by dealing with people with vulnerabilities who are more likely to have a fire or an incident in their own home. And although the main purpose of that work was to deal with vulnerability, it also had the very pleasant side effects of bringing in £2 million over 4 years to help the Fire Authority deal with some of the cuts we've had and to keep our service delivery model on the road. We delivered that programme, that falls response, over about an 18-month period through an agreement, a national agreement with the National Joint Council. So it was pilot work. And when the national scheme came to an end, because of the collapse in pay negotiations with trade unions, we carried on delivering that falls response for those 3 councils using volunteers from within West Midlands Fire Service. That was never a sustainable way of doing it indefinitely, but we used that time to try to strike an agreement with our Fire Brigades Union and other trade unions to try and find a way of continuing to do that work. That proved to be impossible. No agreement was forthcoming from the Fire Brigades Union, and in fact the FBU entered into a dispute over that work, and there was a possibility of strike action. So at that point the Fire Authority clearly withdrew from those services. We did not want to provoke a strike, and we were forced to withdraw from it. So we no longer provide those services, or if we do that at the tail end of withdrawal from Coventry, Dudley and Wolverhampton, which is a pity because those services were being really well received in those 3 areas, and vulnerable people who were benefiting from that service, who'd gone from what was previously a 3-hour wait for an intervention, quite often in the middle of the night, we're getting a response from the fire service in about 14 minutes. We've lost that, and people have lost that, and we've also lost the income that piece of that work was earning. So there's a £2 million hole in our budget on top of government cuts that we're already trying to deal with. So the Fire Authority in September looked at how we deal with that additional shortfall in our budget, and what we're going to do for the remainder of the current year is to reduce the number of voluntary additional shifts that firefighters can volunteer to undertake. That's been very popular with firefighters. They've earned money from doing that after 10-12 years of pay freezes. But we're going to have to do less voluntary additional shifts, employ or keep less firefighters on duty at any one time. And that, of course, consequently means we've got less fire appliances available at any one time, because a fire appliances without firefighters is not fit for purpose. So there's no doubt that there will be less fire engines on the run across the West Midlands. We'll probably reduce some of the smaller brigade response vehicles that we use, but there will be less resources. That's a consequence of the further hit on our budget and dealing with the last 4 years of government cuts as well. Cumulatively, that's causing us real problems. But I am confident, in spite of that, that we will continue to hit the 5-minute target response times that we've got to high-risk incidents in our most vulnerable areas. We can still do that, but that gets more and more difficult every year, and next year will become even more difficult. Almost finally, Madam Mayor, the future governance of the West Midlands Fire and Rescue Authority, and I think we're all familiar with this, we are moving from the current governance structure to a governance within the combined authority, partly under the elected mayor. We've ensured that there's a continuation of a fire committee, so that there is still that democratic involvement by local members in the fire and rescue service. And we've got some red line areas that we've preserved either within the government scheme to make the change of governance or within a revamped constitution for the combined authority. So by doing that, we're protecting the fire service budget and reserves and precept income for the future. We're protecting the responsibilities, the operational responsibilities of the Chief Fire Officer, and we're also making sure that the Fire Committee is established and continues to do the sort of the work that the Fire Authority currently undertakes. And that change should come to fruition in April of next year if the government's got time to create the order to make it happen on one of the days when they're not completely obsessed with Brexit. But finally, Madam Mayor, the last page deals with performance, and you can see I've spelled that out there, the actual performance in the year to date, so the first 6 months of the current year compared with targets, and you can see there that the performance continues to be good. I'll just point out that accidental fires in dwellings are above target, worryingly, but casualties resulting from those fires in homes are below target, which is clearly encouraging. During the 6-month period, 193 people were either rescued or led to safety from fires by firefighters in the West Midlands, and fire crews attended almost 1,400 road traffic collisions and extricated 113 people from those vehicles. And I mentioned again there that in spite of unprecedented cuts to the fire service, we continue to meet that 5-minute response time. We'll continue doing that for this year and I hope next year, but that's more questionable. And although the target is 5 minutes to get to life and death, life-threatening or property fires within high-risk areas, we actually improve on that 5-minute target. It's currently coming in at 4 minutes 43 seconds, which we are confident is the best response time of any fire and rescue service across England. That's the report, Madam Mayor. I'll happily deal with any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Councillor Edwards? Councillor Shackleton.
It's not actually a question, but I just think it's an opportune moment really to say that I don't think we are all aware of the important and extensive prevention work that the fire service undertakes. I know a lot of members in this room were present recently at the Sandwell Safeguarding Adults Board, and I would like to take this opportunity to commend, I remember the name, it's Brian Pearce from West Midlands Fire Service, and he took us through his prevention role at the conference, and I believe everyone in the room was alerted to their own risk of fire. It was amazing how many people didn't even have a smoke alarm or never check the smoke alarm that they've got. Consequently, I would urge all our partners and members at their first opportunity to try and engage with Brian and hear what he's got to say. Were you there, Elaine? I can't remember now. I know Sue Eves was there, for example. We were just taken aback with what he had to say. So I would ask you, John, if you could pass on our really, really grateful thanks to Brian. Most people in that room will never forget the risk that we were alerted to. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I'd like to say that how pleased I am, as I'm sure many others are, that a Labor fire authority with a Labor chair actually took heed of the fire brigade union and their concerns and decided to avoid strike action. It's a shame that though that some fire officers will actually lose out money-wise as a result of that. You've explained the extensive amount of cuts that you've had, and I think it's of concern to us as members and to all the residents out there that in terms of the performance, whilst you're maintaining the performance in terms of getting to fires, the actual numbers are increasing. Accidental fires, deliberate fires, accidental fires in non-domestic premises, and to me, this is a pressure. If this continues to increase as we go forward, then the pressures that you as an authority are under are going to be unsustainable. And the sooner we have a Labor government led by Jeremy Corbyn to actually address some of these things, the better. Leading on to my question, there's an increase in the number of false alarm calls due to the automatic fire alarms. Does the fire authority get any recompense for being called out to these false alarms?
Any more questions? Councillor Edwards, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in reverse order, to Councillor Hughes, yeah, the dispute was very difficult for the West Mids Fire Service. We were seeking to do the right thing, deal with vulnerability, reward firefighters for doing so, and we were very disappointed not to be able to get a local agreement to enable us to do that. The problem wasn't the reason why we couldn't reach a local agreement was because the national position of the Fire Brigades Union is to reach a national agreement on change in roles and to be rewarded for it. And we couldn't convince the National FBU to allow us to strike a local agreement in the West Midlands because they wanted to focus on developing a national settlement. And I understand that. You know, they didn't want to lose their power, their negotiation strength at a time when they're trying to seek a national agreement. The problem is there's no money to fund that national agreement. There's no money in fire authorities to fund it, and the government is so far refusing to contribute towards a solution in widening the role of firefighters so they can develop this health and well-being work, which they are very, very good at. And it is life-saving work if they were allowed to do it. But sadly, we're not there yet, and we're still seeking that national agreement. And I sit on the National Joint Council, and it's been on our agenda now for 18 months, trying to reach that national solution that will allow us to develop local agreements. But we're not there yet. And Peter's right, the stats, and stats need to be looked at over a period, but certainly the period we went through for a long time where the activities of firefighters and other officers in fire prevention and managing fires down, it's worth remembering house fires were reduced by around 50% in this country over the last decade and a half, and that's been because of prevention programmes carried out locally and some national government campaigns as well, and ending things like the lethal foam-filled furniture. So there's been contributions to why the number of fires and the number of fatalities have dropped dramatically. But last year they saw an upturn again, and fire deaths went up and fires increased, and lots of people are thinking, have the good times come to an end? All that reversal, all that prevention that went on, has that now come to an end? Because there is less prevention going on. We've got less firefighters, lower budgets, and clearly prevention suffers as a result of that. And so does our protection service. We employ officers whose role is to keep people safe in places of entertainment, at work, and so on and so forth. We've lost a third of those fire protection officers. So less places are being inspected, people are less safe when they are out and about in the West Midlands, and that's the reality of £38 million worth of government cuts over this period, and it is coming home to roost. And Peter's right, unless we get a government that actually reinvests back into the fire service, then things aren't going to get any better. and there's only one government promising to reinvest in the fire service again, and that's the Labour government. That's the Labour opposition. And the manifestos at the last election, only one party's manifesto mentioned the fire and rescue service, and it was Jeremy Corbyn's budget and the manifesto and the Labour manifesto. And we need that. We do need that change of government as soon as possible. I agree with Councillor Hughes. On Anne's point on Brian Pearce, yeah, thank you, Anne. I will take that back to Brian. He's one of our brilliant officers. He's very imaginative. He communicates really well on the stuff that he understands, and I know that he has that effect on lots of people, not just your group as well. So I will take that back to him, and I'm sure he'll be pleased to receive that feedback. We've got firefighters and fire staff who sit on both of our health and wellbeing boards. They sit on the board in Dudley and in Sandwell as well. And absolutely, I think the fire service is making a contribution to health and wellbeing in the work that he does. And we want to do more of that as we can develop agreements going forward. I think that's all the questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much.
Can I invite Councillor Roger Horton to present the report on the transport for the West Midlands?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report is, I'm afraid, 17 pages, but I don't apologise for that. It just shows the work that the Transport for West Midlands does on behalf of the Combined Authority. If I can go through a few headings and supplement some items in there, I will do my best to be as brief as possible. It starts off on page 1 with an update on the Commonwealth Games, and also a very important point, which is something that the officers are dealing with as well, is the roadworks on the M5 that goes above us in Sandwell, and there's an update there on page 1 as well. It moves on to the Buzz Alliance and all what's going on in the Buzz Alliance network, which has got operators on and other organisations on, and it does do a good job. Rail investment is next. One of the things on that, by the way, which I have to bring to members' attention, is they were expecting a lot of new services come December. Well, you've probably seen it on the news. Because of the chaos of the Northern franchise and the Thameslink franchise in May, the Secretary of State has delayed all bar a few little things till next May. So a lot of the new services that we were expecting for passengers in the West Midlands come December have been delayed till next May. But that has been on the national news. You've got the update there from the West Midlands franchise, from West Midlands Trains and the West Midlands Rail Executive. You've got the Stations Alliance update, which is actually very important for Sandwell. At the moment, the pilot schemes are the line from Walsall to Rugeley, and also the Stour Valley line from Birmingham New Street to Wolverhampton, which takes on stations at Roll Street, Galton Bridge, Sandwell and Dudley, Dudley Port, and Tifton within the Sandwell area. So we should have a lot of new things under the Station Alliance, and it is a partnership agreement by Train Companies Network Rail and the Combined Authority. So hopefully good things from that. Hs2 Connectivity Packages are there. It shows you what's been negotiated regards that, because it's not all about Hs2, it's the benefits that come from Hs2 that sort of cascade down into the local area to the local services, and also gives more room for freight also. Just quickly, the other thing we do is that we've got partnership agreements, and a couple of weeks ago, as the lead member for Rail and Metro, I attended a Chiltern partnership meeting, which is about the third one now in the sequences, not third meeting, but the third tranche of a partnership, where both sides have agreed to put infrastructure in and to work together for the passengers' comfort. And this Friday is something brand new. This Friday will be the first partnership with Virgin Trains, and that will take place at 11 o'clock at Summer Lane this Friday. And so I'm hoping for things to come from that. Again, it's a partnership agreement, so it'll be things from us and things from Virgin, and also coming together for the benefit of the passengers. Passenger panels, we do have passenger panels that we're working on. If I can do this now, and I actually do it once, I've attended since the last report a bus panel where passengers come and go to a bus panel at West Bromwich bus station. I've attended the one at the Metro depot for the Metro passengers, and also we have one for, which I haven't been able to attend because of logistics, is the one for the Cross City line in Birmingham. But it's something that we're working up more than usual, which is to make sure we take on the passenger customer concerns to improve the services for them by us. You've also got the Metro programme and operations there. You've got the sustainable travel, which is always very important, especially with the discussion we had earlier on. You've got the community cycle clubs. On the living streets, on the walk into school, can I just give the council an update? You haven't got this information. I've had an email which has given me the schools that are taking part in it already, which are 5, and 2 which will be taking part soon. The 5 schools that are already taking part in the Living Streets Walk to School programme are Ferndale Primary, Glebefield Primary, Whitecrest Primary, Corngreaves Primary and St Hubert's Primary. And the 2 schools that are about to come on board are Crockett's Primary and Abbey School. So it's very important, and it's something, again, where it helps with the quality of air and makes it a lot better. Right. West Midlands business, youth, employment, innovations, safety and security. If I don't supplement some, because there's a lot of information in there, and if you've read it you don't want me to go over it again, but it's interesting that the safety and security, this is where they get kite marks by independent people for like bus stations, rail stations, park and ride, and we've got quite a lot in this area that have received accreditation. Branding, we're going through a process of branding where everything's been identified under the new Combined Authority logos for different things, from trams, buses, trains, bikes, you name it. It's got their own brandings, all being universal. Appendix 1 is the measuring success, and it goes on about the passenger. These figures are from Passenger Focus, and I think you'll find it is, and it's what the passengers have said about us, not what we think about ourselves. And it's the the performance of the passengers, punctuality, satisfaction. So you can see that there's a lot going on. I'm hoping that was brief enough, Madam Mayor, and if there are any questions I'll do my best to answer them. If not, as usual, I'll take them away and bring answers back later.
Councillor O'Sell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Councillor Rutten, to spring this on you, but I think you might appreciate actually talking about it. At a recent Cabinet petition, a bus service was withdrawn, a small bus service was withdrawn that was in Bearwood, I believe it was, and it was mainly used by pensioners travelling approximately 3-4 stops quite regularly, and quite a number of people actually signed the petition. We asked why the bus route was bus service was being cancelled on that route, and the answer from West Midlands was basically they're not using it enough, there's not enough profit, we're not going to do it, we don't get subsidies. Have we reached, this is the question, have we reached a stage where we are forgetting that we have elderly people who need to get out and socialise, and are the bus companies going to get rid of all the small services that are greatly needed, even if they consider they're not subsidised enough? And that's my question. I'm sorry for springing it on you.
Well, you don't have to apologise, and I do believe that the petition came from my ward, and it was when National Express rationalised the services, and basically what they did, they ended up with less drivers and less buses, but they make the other bus services spread about, and it's because they're a private company. What we do have is we have bus partnerships in the West Midlands, but in the places like London, they've got bus quality contracts, where that takes on board frequencies and takes on board fares and things like that. There has been, on September the 1st, the Dudley and Sandwell review, but the one that you're on about actually came about before the Dudley and Sandwell review, and there are always winners and losers. But regards the way the law works, because they are a private company and they run on commercial grounds, and their only accountability is to the traffic commissioners in some respect and not to local authorities and members of the public. What tends to happen is the Combined Authority and through the Transport for West Midlands, we do have a budget for subsidised services that we put on in place of where they've taken ones off. But the law does not allow us to put a subsidised service on in competition to a commercial service. And the service that you've mentioned, which I won't go into detail, it would be very difficult to replace that service where it doesn't compete with a commercial service. So the law of the land sometimes stops you doing that. But it is something that we have a policy where, yes, we're working with the bus companies, and it does seem to be working well, the bus partnership, but we have in our opposition through the 2000 Transport Act amended in 2012, which is that we do have the options, especially under the Metro Mayor's options to run our own buses. Whether that will ever come about in my time, I don't know. But while the partnership is working, and then we have the backup of the subsidised services, I think you'll find that we have, it is working, but there will always be some losers and some gainers. At the end of the day, when the pensioners are concerned, can I remind them about the last page, I think it is on my report, that the Ring and Ride in Sandwell is doing exceptionally well, except December I think it was when the weather was bad. It's doing exceptionally well, better than most of the areas within the West Midlands. So if people, and they do shopping trips and things like that, the only thing they can't do, because I'm in agreement with the the hospital service minibuses to the hospitals, we can't take people to hospitals. Daft as it sounds, I think we can take people to visit them. But Ring and Ride is a very good avenue for the pensioners, and they're actually now getting that well organised. They are doing shopping trips where they pick people up and take them to the same shopping centre, so it makes it a lot viable. A lot of the days where people used to say you used to see one person on one bus, well, yes, it did happen, and it still does now, but people do want their specific routes. But in a lot of cases now, you will see a lot of full buses going about Ring and Ride as well, where they're getting them all together to go shopping on the same day. And we have got people going from Ring and Ride out to places and getting them to use Ring and Ride, and I think that's why it's doing so well in the Sandwell area. I hope that answers your question, Councillor O'Sell, but thank you for raising it.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Madam Mayor?
Any more questions? Councillor Amelia.
Thank you, Chair. At almost every council we speak about bus services, and sometimes Roger reports the lack of use of some of the buses on some of the services. I'm secretary to an organisation of retired members, and they are constantly complaining about not being able to use the bus pass before 9:30 and after certain times. And we know about the concession that's been given in recent years of pay £1 for a journey. But that doesn't answer the problem. Many morning buses now are very seldom used by the general public. The factories don't all open up at the same time anymore. There's not a main flush of people wanting to use the buses at 7:30 in the morning and at 5 o'clock of an evening. And the pensioners want to know why they can't use the travel pass at all times that the buses are running.
Apologies for the disruption there, Madam Mayor, but I'm afraid my magnifying glass decided to fall apart, and now I feel as if I've got a car without 4 tyres on. Can I just say, regards the travel pass, yes, it is continuously looked at on funding grounds, but what National Express have done, one of their pluses, is that you can go on any National Express bus before 9:30, show them your pass and just pay £1. Now, I think that's exceptional value, but the actual bringing it in before 9:30 will be difficult. But then the time that it finishes, again, because of the commercial nature of it, a lot of people don't go out so much of a night that they used to, and that's where the bus services get less. But can I say that what the Combined Authority through the Transport for West Midlands do is that the national pass, if you go, say, somewhere like Devon or because it's the English one, or Manchester, they're only valid till 11 o'clock. In the West Midlands, we pay the extra, and it's the last buses. Not the night service, but the last buses. So it's extended that way. So it is something that is continuously discussed, and it's something now that National Express have come up with an answer, and at the moment it seems to be working very well. But I agree with you, there's a lot more what I call shoppers' buses now than 12-hour buses. But I'm afraid that is quite right. It is down to the usage of them and the commercialisation of it. If I had my way, I'd use the F word, which is the franchise, like they've got in London, and then you take on board frequencies, you take on board fares, and you're not only doing that, you take on board people. You think of people. But we've got a system that we have to play for that's been in place, thanks to Maggie Thatcher, since 1985. It has been amended in 2000 and 2012, as I've said, but we're trying to do our best, and I think we do quite well. On the patronage, as you'll see on the appendix, the Metro has gone quite well again. There was a dip, but that was of course of the works on the Bilston Road. On the rail, it's still, on the AM peak, it's still now, I think you'll find it's taking in more people now to Birmingham than the bus. So it is something that we are continuously monitoring and working on. And when the new routes of the Metro come up, but can I just again say, like I say to David also, the people that are struggling at certain times, if they have disabilities or if they're elderly, the option is there for Ring and Ride. Use it, don't lose it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Okay, moving on. Can I ask Councillor Costigan to present her report on the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is from February 2018 to September 2018. The panel, the people on the panel, looks to scrutinise the work of the PCC. The panel has met 3 times since February this year. In March, the panel questioned the PCC on the Forces Estates statutory, the proposed closure of 24 buildings and renovations. The PCC clarified closure decisions didn't rest with him but rested with the Chief Constable. However, the PCC would not sign the release of any buildings without assurance that the local policing requirements and local police presence was met in each area. But going forward, with overview and scrutiny, the PCC encouraged elected members from all parties to raise issues relating to policing and crime. But just to add, because I'm going to be brief, just to add, all panel members were and have been complaining about the 101 numbers for quite some time, and also the 999 calls, and the responses. So the panel members have been invited this Friday to Lloyd House, where we'll see it in action and then take the findings back to the next PCC meeting. The only good thing I would say is that at the minute there's 120 cadets on the scheme, but the scheme is actually, by 2020 they are looking to, obviously get over 1,000 cadets, and that is, the scheme is open to age between 13 and 17, and I thought that was quite encouraging. But I'll take any questions, but I think because of the emails I've had and questions are probably going to be asked, if the leader and the cabinet and the rest of the council's okay with it, I think it's time for the Commissioner and the Chief of Police to come to this council chamber to answer our concerns, if you're all in agreement. I'll take some questions.
Councillor Officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to praise David Jameson, the Police Commissioner. With the cuts that he's had to suffer over the last sort of 4-6 years, it's been absolutely difficult for him to do his job and to make progress in improving the perception of people with crimes in their areas. The question I have is that the Police Commissioner does everything in his power to give reassurance, but the communities around us, everywhere, even in other boroughs close to us, Dudley, Walsall, Birmingham, Handsworth, all that area, are absolutely really feeling bad and feel unprotected. I know it's down to the cuts, they say, of the police, people actually being seen and what they actually investigate and their method of policing. But without a doubt, burglaries are up and down like a ball, but there's more of them and they're becoming more violent. Crime and theft like that is on the increase. General fear within the communities about going out at night, and even using shopping centres around the country. People are not feeling safe anymore. And do you think, one of the questions we could ask David is, when are the government going to actually give the money to actually do a job that is vitally important to people? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, I was at the Police and Crime Commissioner meeting yesterday with other panel members in Wolverhampton, and I've got to be honest with you, David Jameson clearly says that even he was really concerned because vehicle crime is now classed as an epidemic. And there's lots and lots of concerns. We've all had issues with 999 calls and 101, which is really non-existent. And yet every panel member there yesterday was we was all concerned about our residents and not feeling safe. So I think this is why I think we need them here to answer the questions we can put forward. So if you're all in agreement, I will invite David and the Chief of Police to come and answer the questions. Thank you.
Are you all in agreement with what Councillor Costigan's asked?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions? Can I invite the leader to present his report on the West Midlands Combined Authority?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I will make a brief presentation, but I'll also call on Councillor Peter Hughes to make a contribution in his role as Chair of the Scrutiny Committee at the Combined Authority, and also for Anne Shackleton in relation to her role in the Health and Wellbeing Board there. And I think it's important to remind people, as I always do, that actually quite a number of people from Sandwell Council are involved with the Combined Authority in one way or another. This isn't about one person who goes off to one set of meetings. And in fact, of course, I hold the portfolio for cohesion, integration and public service reform within the Combined Authority, which is quite an exciting agenda of the social policy component of the work that we're doing. And that's very important to people in places like Sandwell, where we're looking to deal with the impacts of deprivation and ensuring that we achieve social inclusion, not just around physical infrastructure and housing, as important as those things are. Madam Mayor, the first couple of items in the report today have actually already been dealt with earlier on the agenda, either because I presented the issues in relation to the Police and Crime Commissioner consultation, or Councillor John Edwards covered the governance of the fire service in relation to changes around the combined authority. So they're there for your information because they're relevant to this report, but you've already heard about them. What I would draw your attention to, though, is the progression that we're making around the inclusive growth agenda. I would suggest that the West Midlands is probably somewhere in the lead on taking forward inclusive growth policies amongst the combined authorities around the country, and then within that Sandwell Council is at the lead with implementing inclusive growth practices on the work that we're doing here in Sandwell, and that's a very good position to be in. But it is worth noting that actually the director, the combined authority, Henry Kipping, and myself had a joint article in the Local Government Chronicle recently that was flagging up the work that we're doing on inclusive growth, and I think that was a good advert for what we're doing in the West Midlands. The Combined Authorities Inclusive Growth Unit has now been fully put in place. It's took a while to get there, but this is the unit of people that are now turning the initial policy work that we undertook into action plans for further work, both as integrated into the combined authorities or the strategies, but also importantly working up what we're going to ask for in future devolution deals for the West Midlands from government. And I personally think that some of the most challenging things, or things that are challenging for the government to let go of and give over to us, will actually be part of that social policy agenda, and how we might be able to be arguing for fiscal changes to public finances around that social policy agenda. So that I would say, there's some very exciting things coming down the line that will be worth looking out for. And alongside that, the work of the Social Economy Task Force will be coming to a conclusion in the not too distant future. We'll be expecting a report on that before I make my next report to full council. And I think that that's very important in terms of how we mainstream social businesses into the mainstream economy in the West Midlands. Social businesses are often seen as some sort of nice thing to have on the side rather than part of the core economy. I would like to see that change in the West Midlands. I would like to see cooperatives and social businesses at the community level and building up from the community level being seen as important in building the West Midlands economy as getting inward investment is. And I think that we can make a step change here in doing that. With that, can I invite Councillor Peter Hughes to make a contribution, please?
Thank you, Leader. Since the last four council, the work of the committee has developed in terms of the 5 working groups which I referred to in my previous verbal report. During September, the lead members for each of the working groups met with the relevant directors within the combined authority to discuss where scrutiny could add value to the work of the combined authority. And they've now met to undertake a scoping exercise to determine the work programme for the coming year. In terms of the committee itself, we have had programmed that lead members and their directors will be coming to the committee at various stages during the year to explain the progress with their respective portfolios. I had no influence on this, but the first leader and portfolio holder that we actually had in front of us was Councillor Steve Ealing, the portfolio holder for Cohesion, Integration and Public Service Reform. He was there with Henry Kipping, and he attended to answer questions on the progress being made not only on inclusive growth but also the implementation of the recommendations of the Leadership Commission's recent report on diversity and leadership roles across the region. They also outlined the work undertaken on inclusive growth. One of the recommendations that came out of that committee was then subsequently reported to the Combined Authority Board. Effectively, the work of the Combined Authority should lead to growth inclusively across the population, across the whole of the Combined Authority. So it's a running theme that should actually be in every part of their work. And so the recommendation we made was that, and was accepted by the board, was that there should be an element of any report that goes before the board should include a section relating to inclusive growth. Another issue that was picked up during that committee was the business support package and compensation for those people that are affected by works relating to Midland Metro construction and repair. This had been a particular issue in Wolverhampton with the metro repairs that were needed there, and also the extension through to the railway station. We did accept the report that was given by Nafisa Reef relating to this, but one of the things that came out of the discussion was that the member for Wolverhampton, Councillor Steve Simpkins, actually brought up the fact that there were many business people on the Bilston Road area in Wolverhampton that were still not satisfied with the way that they've been dealt with in relation to those works and the way that it had affected business. Now, this should be of interest to everybody because we'll be having metro works and possibly metro repair works over the next few years. We should be assured that we're looking into the problems that happen with the Bilston Road traders by carrying out a task and finish group, and a report will be submitted to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 26th of November. At that meeting we also appointed 3 Scrutiny Champions, and they were to cover areas that we haven't dealt with on the working groups, and these are leading on diversity, and the Leaders Like You report is Councillor Jackie Taylor of our own council. On transport we have Councillor Angus Lees from Dudley and Councillor Mike Chaw from Redditch, and non-constituent representatives. And on air quality, which is an issue for all of the member authorities, particularly with the Birmingham Clean Air Zone, and the member leading on that is Councillor Steve Simpkins of Wolverhampton. Just to conclude, on the 28th of September we had a Mayor's question time. We met at Civic Centre in Wolverhampton. This was the first of a number of sessions during the year, and in December councillors will question the Mayor on his 2019-20 draft budget. But the session in September focused on the progress made in delivering the policy objectives contained in the Combined Authority's annual plan. The 2-hour grilling was held in public and streamed live on the internet. Councillors from across the region asked the Mayor questions on issues as diverse as housing provision, air quality measures, transport infrastructure, Brexit and the Leadership Commission's recent report on diversity roles across the region. He spoke about a number of key developments during the last year, including an increase in the funding allocated to walking and cycling initiatives, which has come down to Samuel as many of the others. The Housing First initiative to provide housing units for the region's rough sleepers, and the installation of a sensor on the roof of 16 Summer Lane as part of an air quality monitoring scheme. I have to say, the one problem the committee had relating to the Mayor was that we specified a 2-hour meet, The same thing happened at this meeting as happened at the previous meeting on the budget, that he decided that he wanted to cut that 2-hour meeting short by about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. It was the overwhelming view of the committee that in future the Mayor should designate time in his diary so he's not rushing off to another meeting, and in fact we're looking to extend the time from 2 hours to possibly 2.5 or 3 hours in future. There's also a possibility we will increase the number of question times during the year to about 4 rather than 2. Thank you. And I'll take any questions.
And I invite Councillor Anne Shackleton to talk to us about the Health and Wellbeing Board activity, please.
Thank you. Health and wellbeing. So here the focus on the wellbeing agenda of the WMCA has been on keeping the people of the West Midlands healthy so that they are able to contribute to and benefit from the economic growth at the heart of the WMCA strategy. This means that the health and wellbeing agenda is also clearly aligned with the public sector reform and inclusive growth agenda. So, a plan has been drawn up on one page. Yes, one page, that's what we like to see. So the plan for the Health and Wellbeing Programme has been developed, and it's made up of 3 components. Firstly, we have productivity and health, and here we hope to unlock the economic premium generated by a healthy and well population, supporting the WMCA's ambition for inclusive growth that reinforces the link between health, wealth and human capital. Our activities focus on intelligence to support better health outcomes across all policies, and on specific activities to improve the resilience and social mobility of the children and young people. And secondly, we have the radical prevention, enabling models of radical prevention that tackle the causes of ill health and poor productivity in the West Midlands. So important. Our role here is as an innovation partner, trialling new initiatives, catalysing change and promoting new ways of working across the system in areas within which we can add value to our partners. And thirdly, we have system collaboration, providing a system leadership role, supporting better outcomes and strengthening the links between health, care and other sectors within public services. Our role here is to support collaboration, acting in areas where we can bring people together and support whole place change led by our partners. So if we can remember the 3 areas: productivity and health, radical prevention and system collaboration. Thank you.
So if I can thank the contributors, Councillor Peter Hughes, Councillor Anne Shackleton, and I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Any questions? No? Agenda item number 13, minutes of the Cabinet. The Cabinet has met twice since the last ordinary meeting of the Council. The minutes of the meeting are before Council tonight. Can I invite the Leader of the Council to present the minutes of the Cabinet?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I will present both sets of minutes in one go, if you don't mind. That's for the Cabinet meeting for the 25th of July and the Cabinet meeting for the 19th of September. There are no decisions required by the full Council this evening, Madam Mayor, arising for the minutes, but we'll be happy to take any questions that arise. Thank you.
Councillor Linda Orton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to draw attention to the 25th, if I got the right one, of September. Hang on. Cabinet. 25th of July, I do beg your pardon. I'd moved on a space. Minute 102.18, and it's Public Spaces Protection Order, West Bromwich Town Centre. Can I just say, first of all, that I welcome this report on the Public Spaces Protection Order, and I look forward to the time when it's being implemented across the borough, because I know that we all have issues in all of the 6 towns, and I'm sure we'd all like to be included in that. I would like to ask that when is the report back going to be received on its implementation and effectiveness? As it does say in the report, autumn 2018. Well, according to the leaves outside on the trees, it's autumn now. So are we going to have it pretty soon? But can I say, please, that whilst supporting this action, I note with interest the implementation group comments on nuisance parking. And that's on the following page, where it says the implementation group also made a clear distinction that action to address nuisance parking must be limited to parking that caused real obstruction to people, especially people with whom mobility was restricted. Madam Mayor, I have been approached by numerous blind and disabled people in my ward about the growing number of drivers who automatically park on the pavements these days. This causes danger to many people by obstructing their right of way. On a daily basis, disabled people, wheelchair users, blind and partially sighted people, parents with prams and pushchairs, as well as able-bodied people, are being put at risk by inconsiderate drivers blocking pavements. I'm told that guide dogs will take a blind person into the road in order to pass an obstruction on the pavement. Wheelchair users are at risk of being tipped out of their chairs trying to negotiate their way around vehicles on the pavement. Parents with prams and toddlers in tow having to dodge oncoming traffic in the road. This is totally unacceptable. In London, it has been illegal for anyone to park on the pavements except in designated zones since 1974. It also highlighted, Madam Mayor, in the Highway Code that it's illegal. Then if it's okay for London, why is it not illegal in Sandwell? It's within the remit of this council to put in place a traffic regulation order to make parking on pavements illegal in areas where the roads are wide enough to allow normal parking. Where there are narrow roads, pavements can be marked with white lines, allowing a small part of the pavement to be used for parking while still allowing people to pass safely, and for emergency vehicles, should they need to use them in an emergency, to access the roads safely. Madam Mayor, I call upon this council, through the Cabinet Member for Highways and the above-mentioned implementation group, to look at how to make our pavements safer for all people in Sandwell, and to do this with all haste before a life is lost unnecessarily. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Amelia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a point of information to Councillor Horton, there are bylaws within the Metropolitan Borough Council made by the Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council under section 164 of the Good Rule and Government of the County Borough of West Bromwich, and for the preservation of nuisances made by the Council of the said County Borough, already in existence and have been for many years. And the law appertaining to this question is preservation of road margins laid out for ornamental purposes, and an ornamental verge is any one that is maintained by the local authority. In other words, they cut the grass.
Councillor Amelia, I'm sorry, but you should be asking questions relating to the minutes.
I'm allowed to put a point of information, Madam Chairman.
No, you're not, I'm being told.
I think you're breaching rules of any meeting by not allowing points of information.
As the person on the receiving end, I would be happy to receive Councillor Amelia's observation, if that would help.
Thank you very much indeed. As I've said, the preservation of road margins laid out for ornamental purposes, Bylaw 26. No person shall without lawful authority drive or place a vehicle or cause a vehicle to be driven or placed upon any road margin to which this bylaw applies. And then there's a list a mile long. And the fine in 1971 was £20 for every occasion. Now I would assume from 1971 £20 would be a great deal of money, and it would make anybody think twice if they'd been fined. I think this rule is already there on the statute, Madam Mayor, and I can't see why we can't continue using it or restart using it. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Oh, you're going to come in first. Roger Orton, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Mayor. It is a fact that I've dealt with it in the past, where we've looked for bylaws or gone to do bylaws only to find that they're already there when the 6 towns came together as Sandwell in 74. Could I ask that Steve and the relevant cabinet member or the leader exchange the information and have it looked into to see if we need to make any new bylaws or whether the bylaws are there already? And do I have to declare an interest as being somebody that is obstructed on a regular basis? Obstructed.
Any other questions? Councillor Costigan.
No,
Oh, yeah, you're going to come in first.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to call Councillor Costigan in a couple of minutes, particularly in relation to the public space protection order, but she's got some information about parking on pavements as well. But I did want to pick up a couple of points. The one about the report back in the autumn's going to become a bit elastic, I think, because we took the decision that we took in July for the public space protection order, and we expected 3 months of operation to have happened and to be able to get a report back in the autumn, or certainly this side of Christmas. I think as it turned out, because of all the legals and the notices, the PSPO didn't actually come into effect until the beginning of September. So we're not going to have 3 months' worth of operation and evaluated and come to Cabinet, I think, this side of Christmas. I suspect that really we're going to be looking at early in the new year. And we do want to see 3 months' worth of operation so that we've got something reasonable to be able to evaluate. But we'll certainly be looking to get the maximum amount of evaluation out of that 3 months that we possibly can. The objectives that we set out on that review after 3 months are unchanged, but the timetable is changed slightly. On the other issue, I mean, I don't know why London should have different laws to everybody else about the highway code. Normally they tell you that the highway code has to be exactly the same everywhere, but then there are certain exceptions to that. There is potentially an issue around bylaws, and I think we have to look at this, and I'll take that away, because actually if it was a County Borough of West Bromwich bylaw, it may still be relevant, but it'll only be relevant to half of the borough. And sorry, I'm not going to be interrupted. I'm going to take it away and look at it, but the old bylaws apply to what the bylaws apply to, so it may well be that there is an opportunity to take further action, on a review of what powers that we have got. But bylaws tend to be more restrictive than statute law, so they wouldn't deliver, I suspect, what London has that exists in statute law. But it's worth looking at. We know that this is an ongoing problem. There are actions that we can take now, and there are actions that are taken now. I'm going to ask Councillor Costigan to come in on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, obviously the PSPO provides additional powers to the council, and it's obviously its partners. But going on to Councillor Horton's question, the implementation group do meet once a month. It's a multi-agency group, and I know the town chair and vice chair, and I think one of the cabinet members does get invited. But apparently, Linda, I think you'll be pleased to hear that there is the police have actually launched Operation Park Safe and you're probably quite pleased. I've had some printed off. It's actually already been, it's implemented already, and apparently it's already been improvement already seen in parking on the Tantony estate in West Bromwich. And when you look at this is exactly what they are doing, so I think you'll be quite keen to see. So basically, it does look complicated because apparently you take a photograph and you send it off, but then you have to fill a form in as well. But then whoever it is parked fully on the pavement, and you'll see there's photographs here with all the instructions on. So basically, you take the photograph, send it off, you fill in a traffic offence report, and whoever's parked like that gets a fine. So the police have started something. So I think the implementation group, Shirley Ozell's nodding, it has been brought there. So I think between us, we hopefully something can, and obviously the Cabinet Member for Highways will look at it as well. Okay, Linda. But you're more than welcome. There's 12 here if you want to take it away. Thank you.
So, with that, Madam Mayor, unless there are any other questions, I think there is one.
Not a question, but an offer that the relevant scrutiny committee have an opportunity to call this particular item in and actually look at the whole situation of parking. I think every ward member has had a situation where parking on footpaths have caused issues in terms of danger to, particularly to disabled people and people with pushchairs. In fact, we had a situation in Wednesbury at Brunswick Park Road where luckily the Cabinet Member for Highways was able to help and actually save some serious accidents by facilitating parking bays down there. Now, this type of thing can be picked up through scrutiny. There are going to be roads where parking on footpaths, because of the narrowness of the roads, is almost inevitable. So I don't think it can be a sweeping statement which affects right across the board. So I think Councillor Rollins will be leading on this, and I think she'd probably bring people from disability groups and what have you in front of her to give evidence and try and find the right recommendations to come back to Cabinet and for Council.
Councillor Ozell.
While I've got the opportunity, Chair, Madam Mayor, could I ask the Leader if there's any good news he can give us about the new hospital? So I believe that something happened that might be classed as good news.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just respond on the parking issue? I certainly welcome scrutiny taking some evidence on this in terms of the scale of the problem that we've got. I mean, it's not as though every street in the borough has people all over the pavement obstructing and preventing passage, but we have some very definite problems in some parts of the borough, and particularly on some of the main thoroughfares and in certain narrow streets. And what we would like to do, I would have thought, is to find a pragmatic solution that, you know, tries to look after everybody in a sense, so that people can park the car and people can also get past unimpeded. And that means actually getting a real understanding of where our major issues are and what we need to do about them, and scrutiny can be adding value to that exercise. I'm giving an undertaking that we will go away from here and bring through Cabinet and the relevant Cabinet members to be looking at the statutory provision. As I say, we haven't got the powers that they've got in London, but we have got some powers, and the police have powers to deal with obstruction anyway. You know, we don't actually need additional laws in order for the police to deal with obstruction, but there may well be a number of other things that we can do that we've either already got powers for or that we could take powers for. And that's something that I'm giving an undertaking that we'll look at in order to deal with the problems where they exist. And of course, people who churn up grass verges annoy other people as well when people pull onto verges. You know, enormous amount of damage gets done, much to the annoyance of the residents where the damage is done outside their house, you know. So this problem comes in many different forms. Just to Councillor Russell, I've got some really good news at the back end of the agenda, so you're going to have to wait a few more minutes for that one. Thank you.
Any more questions? Right. Agenda item 14, minutes of the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee. Can I invite Councillor Priest to present the minutes of the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee meeting held on the 26th of July?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief because Bake Off started. I don't want to annoy anybody. I'd just like to draw Council's attention to a couple of points. The last meeting of the Audit and Risk Assurance Committee was a very important one for us. It was the one where we considered Council's statement of accounts for the last financial year. I'm pleased to report to Council and give you assurance that this Council remains on a sound financial footing and that I am satisfied our strategic risks are being managed appropriately. The only slight negative point of that meeting I'd like to make you aware of is that I had to take the unusual step of adjourning the meeting for a very short amount of time as papers were late being published. However, I have gained assurance from managers that that will not be happening again, and I would like to thank the audit team and the team in finance for preparing those statements of accounts as the deadline for this year was brought significantly forward from last year. And with that, I'll move the minutes and take any questions, Madam Mayor.
Any questions? No. Agenda item 15, minutes of the Ethical Standards and Member Development Committee. Can I invite Councillor Lewis to present the minutes of the Ethical Standards and Members Development Committee held on the 28th of September?
Madam Mayor, with your permission, as Chair of the Ethical Standards and Development Committee, I wish to make a brief statement before I move the minutes of the Standards Committee. First and foremost, I would like to move a vote of thanks to the Monitoring Officer, Deputy Monitoring Officer, independent member of the committee, investigating officers and staff from the Legal Department and Democratic Services for all they have given to this committee over the past 24 months. In Sandwell, we have a good track record of elected council members adhering to the Constitution of the Code of Conduct. However, there was one or two members of this council who, in their naivety, shame, greed and corruption, brought this council into disrepute. Members, most of the cases you have before you in the minutes of this evening's Ethical Standards and Development Committee have come to a conclusion, with the exception of two which are still pending. One will be dealt with by the working group of this committee. In conclusion, Madam Mayor, I wish to thank all members of this committee, past and present, for all they have given to me over the past months. As Chairman of this committee, thanks also to the barristers and solicitors for the legal and professional advice given to us over the past months. Madam Mayor, with that I move the minutes of the Standards, Ethical and Development Committee, which was held on the 28th of September 2018. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there any
and I'll answer any questions.
Is there any questions for Councillor Lewis? No? Then we move on to agenda item 16, minutes of the General Purpose and Arbitration Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the minute of the General Purpose and Arbitration Committee of 20th of August. By moving that, I don't want to repeat the words which has been said by the previous speakers, Councillor Gavin and Edward. I simply move what the committee resolved.
Any questions?
Hold on. The committee resolved that the office of honorary committee resolved the office of honorary freeman of the borough to be conferred upon Mr. David Manners, and the Director Monitoring Officer, in consultation with the Mayor and the Leader of the Council, make the appropriate arrangements to implement the decision referred to in the Resolution 1 above. Same thing,
committee resolved to recommend to the Council that office of the Honorary Alderman of the Borough be conferred upon Mr. Gurcharan Singh Sidhu, and the second, the Director Monitoring Officer, in consultation with the Mayor and the Leader of the Council, make the appropriate arrangements to implement the decision referred to Resolution 1. I'll move. Taken question, Madam Mayor.
Any questions for Councillor Dallow? No? Agenda item 17, key decisions of the Chief Officer's Terms and Conditions of Committee. Can I invite the Leader to present the key decisions of the Chief Officer's Terms and Conditions Committee?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I present the minutes of the committee and would like the Council to welcome Dr Lisa McNally, who will be taking up the role of Director of Public Health, coming here from the Director of Public Health role in Bracknell Forest. So move the report, Madam Mayor.
Are there any questions for Councillor Ealing? No? Agenda item 18, response to notice of motion. I invite the Chief Executive to report on the response received to the motion.
Madam Mayor, the Leader has indicated he'd like to speak on this issue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought it might be appropriate. We instructed the Chief Executive to write to the Secretary of State for Health in relation to the Midland Metropolitan Hospital to remind ourselves that the work on the hospital had come to a halt at the beginning of the year with the collapse of the main contractor, Carillion, and you know, it was clear that the price of completing the hospital was increasing rapidly and that additional money would need to be found from somewhere, by the government more to the point, in order to ensure that the hospital was finished. And notwithstanding all the noise that had been made by any number of people about how they were pressurising the government to get the work started again, nothing had happened. No extra money had been found. No work was going on site. And so in July, we decided as the Council to resolve that we should call on the government to come up with the money and to get the project going again. Well, we obviously frightened the life out of them, didn't we? Because it was only a few weeks later then that we got the letter back saying that they'd do it. So, well done all in this chamber for doing what everybody else couldn't and getting the hospital going again.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, I close the meeting.